Hello, I'm Henry Neufeld of Energion Publications, and today I'm talking with Dr. David Allen Black, editor of the website Dave Black Online. We're going to be talking about his book, It's All Greek to Me. I tell you what, when I start to introduce you, sometimes I say, here's Dr. David Allen Black, is professor of Greek and New Testament at Southeastern Baptist. I sense that there's a possibility that my audience is ready to go to sleep because what on earth interesting can a professor of Greek have to say? Which, if I read the book right, might have been your own reaction to a similar introduction when you were younger. So tell us a little bit. Were you always the bookish, intellectually oriented, indoorsy type, or how did it go?
Now, you're talking about which book?
It's All Greek to Me.
It's All Greek to Me. Well, I was born and raised in Hawaii, okay? So I was just a simple beach bum for the first 19 years of my life.
In other words, not the bookish intellectual type.
Are you kidding? Did I go to high school? I must have. I have a diploma, Henry, but I don't remember taking algebra or English. I must have. But, I remember the 3 years I was in high school, we had an open campus policy. All the intellectuals behind mahogany desks experimenting in pedagogy said, they're mature enough to decide whether to come to class or not, so we'll make it an open campus for 3 years. So 3 years I happened to be there. Which meant you came to class if you wanted to, and you didn't come to class if you didn't want to. I never wanted to go, and I never went. After those 3 years, by the way, they reversed that policy, but for the 3 years I was in high school, attendance was not compulsory. So I was at the beach every day. I surfed on average, about 365 days a year. Surfing was my god, and my goddesses were Pipeline, Haleiwa, Pupukea, Sunset Beach, etc. Yeah, that was my whole life. And so I was not serious about studies. To answer your question, me, studies? No.
And so at that point you could have said, it's all Greek to me.
Exactly.
And then you came upon your life, as you tell the story, and it's still Greek to me. You encountered Greek, which, as I recall, you adored from moment one.
No.
Oh.
No.
I'm getting so many things wrong today.
At the age of 19, I just wanted to study the Bible. I started as a music major at the University of Hawaii. I was playing trumpet semi-professionally. But God put it in my heart, just this love for the Bible. And I remember specifically the day when I was 16 when he gave me that love. And I'm sure you probably remember the day that you fell in love with the Bible. But I wanted to study the Bible. At that time, there were no Bible colleges in Hawaii. So, where am I going to go to study the Bible? Someone said, well, in Southern California, there's a place called Biola College.
Right.
The former Bible Institute of Los Angeles said, did they have a Bible major? They said, yes. I said, I'm going. And so when I was 19, I got aboard a 747. We rounded Diamond Head. I said goodbye to my home in Kailua and started my life in California. Next 27 years, I lived in La Mirada, California, both as a student and as a teacher. And so I enrolled as a Bible major. And at Biola, they required 2 years of Greek as a Bible major. The first year was actually classical Greek. I taught from a textbook that was designed for one semester in Harvard. They scraped by in two. So, I had heard all the horror stories about Greek. I kept postponing it. I didn't want to take Greek. I had no foreign language experience, except for the Hawaiian that I knew. But by the time I got to California, all I remembered was Aloha and Bukum Dano. That was about the extent of it. So here I'm enrolling as a Bible major, and I've got to take 2 years of Greek. So I kept putting off. Now I'm a graduating senior. I have to take 2 years of Greek. So I bite the bullet and I enroll as a first-year Greek student. Going to take first-year Greek and then graduate 6 units deficient. They allowed you to do that at the time at Biola, and take my 6 units of intermediate Greek during the summer and then get my diploma. That was my plan. Well, I lasted 3 weeks in class before dropping. I had a professor whose philosophy was make it as difficult as possible the first 3 weeks and weed out all the dumb, stupid idiots. And it worked. We were dropping like flies. I didn't understand a word that guy was saying. So, yeah, that was my introduction to Greek.
And that reminds me a little bit of the subtitle, the unlikely academic part.
Yeah.
Because very few people would imagine And I think this is important for all of those people who might be considering looking at Greek, but they think, oh my, I'm never going to make it through there. The unlikely academic part, everybody would imagine that you jumped in, that Greek was your thing, you jumped into it, you love it, because you're a professor of Greek now. Isn't that how professors of Greek are
Greek
born?
for 39 years. What? The rest of the story. The rest of the story is I had dropped Greek and I'm in the throes of despair. What am I going to do? I need 2 years of Greek to graduate as a Bible major. So I was considering changing my major to Christian education like everybody else who couldn't handle the languages. And then I found out about a school in Chicago called Moody Bible Institute. And they had a cassette tape instruction of beginning Greek, not classical, basic New Testament Greek, taught simply, taught on my level. I was treated like the dumb, stupid idiot that I was. Like, here's a noun, this is what a noun is, this is what a verb is. And I enrolled, and within 4 months, I had taken both semesters of beginning Greek and had gotten A's in both classes. Went ahead and graduated, 6 units deficient, took 6 units of Greek under the same professor, Dr. Harry Sturz, aced both classes. And a year later, Dr. Sturz hired me to teach 11 units of Greek at Basel University. That was 1976. 39 years later, I'm still teaching Greek. And I tell that story for 2 reasons. Number one, it doesn't take a smart student to learn Greek. It just takes a motivated student. And I just teach my students as if they're all dummies. I say, oh, you've had 4 years of Spanish? I don't care. You've had 2 years of high school German? I don't care. Because you didn't remember anything anyway. So I'm going to treat you like you know nothing about language. Is that okay with you, everybody? And they all nod their heads.
Yep.
Okay. It doesn't take a smart, it takes a motivated, self-disciplined, and someone who has some time management skills. That's all it takes. If I could learn Greek, like anybody can learn Greek. The second reason I tell that story, Henry, is because I literally came that close to what has become a huge part of my life. Not all of my books are on Greek, but a lot of them are. Learn to read New Testament Greek, it's still Greek to me. Linguistics for Students of New Testament Greek, New Testament. I mean, the list goes on and on. About half of my books maybe have to do with Greek. And I look back and I say, I came that close to missing what has become a huge part of the ministry that God has given to me. So God was very good to allow me to have discovered Moody, because really I was at the end. I didn't know what to do.
So does this say something also, though, about pedagogy and
absolutely.
Thinking about how we teach Greek? Because I am acquainted, as you are, I'm sure, with the number of people who come out and, they took however much Greek in seminary, but they no longer know any of it. Yeah. They no longer use it.
And many of my former students were the same way. But, I tell my students, if I have 45 in a section like I do now, I tell if anybody drops, I'll consider myself a partial failure. I don't want anybody dropping this class. I'm here in your boat. I'm to make it as easy as possible for you. I don't want to sink anybody's boat. Let's get this job done. And my promise to them at the end of 9 months, 2 semesters of Greek, my promise to them is they'll be able to read their Greek New Testament with the minimal use of a lexicon. If you stick with it, that's the reward. What a reward is that? Great reward. And I'm finding a lot more homeschoolers are using Greek now in the curriculum. They're using my textbook in that and my DVDs in that, because they want a classical education for their children, but for many years, Henry, that was considered Latin. Now they realize that if they can study Greek, guess what? Not only do they get a classical language, they can read their New Testament in the original language too. So there's a groundswell of interest now, I think just generally, that Greek is the language to go. Now I'm not against Latin. I love Latin, okay? I love reading in Latin. I sometimes pray in Latin. And I love Latin music, okay? The old Gregorian chants, for example, I'm listening to that. I love reading my Vulgate, but there's nothing like reading the New Testament in the original language.
So would you recommend studying Greek to the average church member?
I would, and I taught it for a year in my local church. I don't know if you knew that. Four years ago or so, I taught Greek. We met every Monday night. We went for a year. I started out with 56 students. We ended with 6. But those 6 students knew Greek. By the way, Becky was sick with cancer at the time, but she had always wanted to take Greek with me, so she enrolled in the class. She was one of my best students until chemotherapy made it too difficult for her to continue the class. But she was getting 110s on everything. She was doing all the memory work. She was just having the time of her life. So we started out with a whole bunch of students, but you always have, in a local church, you'll always have attrition. Now, how much did they pay me to teach Greek in my local church? Nothing. How much did we charge the students to take Greek? Nothing. In other words, you don't have to. And it was such a success that the church came to me and says, let's start a Bible Institute here at our church. That's the way we Baptists think. We're going to organize everything, right? We got to have a registrar. We've got to have a fee. I said, no, just do it. Just do it. So yes, I encourage all of my students, the best way to learn the language is actually by teaching it.
Yeah.
And so many of them are teaching it.
And you do have a set, should mention that if they go to daveblackonline.com, you have a set of DVDs. They can get information
If you go to Dave Black Online and click on the Greek portal, it'll take you to the 24 DVD set that was recorded before a live audience in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia for 6 weeks. Now, it's all in English. None of it's in Ethiopian or Amharic, but it was great, and it was professionally produced. It was edited in Dallas, and it's published in New York, and like I say, a lot of people are using it. A lot of homeschool families are using it. If you want me to be your personal teacher, these DVDs are available.
I just wanted to make sure people were aware of that. We do also have your Learn to Read New Testament Greek now in Spanish, which Energion publishes. Let's go on just to cover a little bit more. After that narrow miss, as you put it, of what has become a major part of your life, you went on and eventually went to school at Basel?
I did. Yeah, I finished my Master of Divinity while teaching 11 units of Greek at Biola. I was taking maybe 8 or 10 hours at Talbot, and so I was in the 5-year MDiv program.
Well acquainted with that.
You know, I was graduating in 1980, and so I said, where would I want to go for a doctorate? You know, and I didn't want to go to a typical United States seminary doctorate, which was a lot of busy work, 2 years of busy work, courses, exams, quizzes, colloquiums, and stuff, and before you could write your dissertation. I really wanted to do a European model, which is just dissertation. It's all research oriented. I was ready for that. And then the next question, should I stay here or should I go abroad? Well, I really wanted to study in a liberal institution, in a prestigious university setting. But too often the situation in the States is these liberal institutions are liberal, open-minded, until and unless you espouse a fairly conservative position, and all of a sudden they become closed-minded. Whereas on the continent, especially Basel, Basel has always been open to different kinds of people. That's where, Erasmus, the great humanist, was. That's where Calvin fled, right? And that's where he wrote his Institutes at the ripe old age of 22 in Basel, Switzerland, because it was a place where people could go and not fear for there being different thinking theologically. And so, I ended up in Basel because of that, and also because I wanted the challenge of studying in a German-speaking institution. Becky and I wanted to live in a foreign culture. That's 2 educations for the price of 1. But primarily I wanted to study under a man that you probably never heard of. His name is Buraika. He's now with the Lord, but he was a doyen of New Testament studies. In my day, the president of the Society for New Testament Studies. Just a wonderful man who combined humanitas and pietas. Scholarship and godliness in such a marvelous way that I wanted to be like him. And my favorite verse as a teacher is Luke 6:40, when a disciple is perfectly taught to be just like his teacher, because Christian education is likeness education. And so I wanted to be like him. And so I had the privilege of having him as my Dr. Father. That's what they called him, Dr. Father, for those 3 years. And it was just a wonderful experience.
I want to say one of the things that I particularly like about It's Still Greek to Me is that story going from your youth, where you were, and through all of this education, and in a sense coming back full circle, where you're talking now to everybody. That you don't, in going both in your overseas missions and your missions here, in conversations like we're having right here, is to talk to the whole church. Do you intentionally work toward speaking, how should I say, bringing the academic world to the laity, to the less, or does it just happen naturally for you?
I operate in both worlds, and I love both worlds. I love the pure academic world. I've published academic monographs that nobody will ever read. But at the same time, I really am motivated to bring everything down to the bottom shelf, and I think in a sense maybe God has given me that gift. And most of the books that I've written, they're getting shorter, they're getting simpler, they're getting more to the point. And I'm not writing today more for the scholars as I once did, as more for average Christians. And I'm trying to take complicated concepts and making them less complicated, because Sproul once said, a great preacher is like an iceberg. You only see 10%, but underneath you sense the 90%. And the key to effective preaching or teaching to me today is being simple without being simplistic. And unfortunately, a lot of churches, it's both simple and simplistic. I mean, you sense that he's not really done the homework, or, it's very simplistic and superficial, same old, same old. What I would like to do is take that 90% and make it accessible to a broader audience, okay? So, as you know, because many of my books with you are very short, my books are getting shorter, more to the point. I read a lot. I just, last week at our library, I must have checked out 20 books from our library, new monographs, new tomes on the New Testament. And I say, it's a 400, 500 page book. I say, they could have said that in 100 pages easily. Mm. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I do think it's just a special interest of mine. Maybe it's even a gift that God has given me to do that. But I really do think that it's fun to take all these juicy thoughts, like linguistics. I wrote a book called Linguistics for Students of New Testament Greek. It's like the first book
I've read it.
ever to incorporate linguistic insights with New Testament Greek. Well, people will say, well, what right does Dave Black, he's a New Testament scholar, what right does Dave Black have to write a book on linguistics? I say, none. But you linguists aren't doing it, and I need a book like this, so okay, I'll go ahead and write it.
Well, and sometimes the person who is the specialist in linguistics doesn't really understand how to bring that down to the New Testament scholar who needs some of those insights.
Or they belong to a particular school of linguistics. Whereas me, I'm very eclectic. I see something here I like, I'll put it in the book. I see something here I like.
What applies to the circumstances. Well, the book it's still Greek to me, and I would call it an edifying or a building story, and it is a short book.
Now it's still Greek to me. It's my intermediate grammar, but it's all Greek to me. I think
it's all Greek to me.
Exactly.
I'm sorry. Did I just?
That's okay.
Okay. We'll suggest they go to the intermediate grammar after they go to the DVDs, and then we can read. It's all Greek.
Either one is the perfect cure for insomnia.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Dave.
Thank you.